We'll start. Acha, first of all, welcome to the class. তোমাদের সেই ফিজিক্সের সাবজেক্ট কোড হচ্ছে 5054. One of the primary things that I usually discuss in the first class is that how we should approach problem solving, which I personally feel to be pretty important. And also, how do I prefer to teach the syllabus? I discuss these stuffs first, and then we'll jump into the subject material. Amader, in the 5054 syllabus course, we have 3 papers. Paper 1, which is the MCQ paper. It is a 1 hour 50-minute exam, I believe. I forget always, like 50 minutes ase na nai, I think ase. দাঁড়াও, তোমরা হচ্ছ তোমরা পরীক্ষা দিবা কখন? 2021 এ না 2023 তে? আচ্ছা, ব্যাপার না, ওই সিলেবাসে নামায় নেওয়া যাবে। এখানে ঢুকছি হচ্ছে এটা দেখার জন্য। আচ্ছা, 1 hour. Yes, paper 1 is MCQ question. That is a 1 hour test which where you have to answer 40 compulsory answers. There is compulsory questions, four answers each, 40 marks. Then we have the paper 2. Paper 2 is the structured portion, which is the written version. So structured. This is a 1 hour 15 minutes exam. One of the things that in this paper we have 2 sections. Section A is, this is a total 75 mark exam. This one is 40 mark. Section A has 45 marks in it, where you have to answer all the questions without any option. In section B, you have to answer 2 questions, each are 15 marks out of 3. So you have a total 1 hour 50 minutes exam, means you have a total 75 minutes. Within 75 minutes, you have to answer 75 marks. So it's practically 1 minute per mark. The way I usually recommend to approach this paper is, the moment you get your question paper in hand, first read all the 3 questions of section B. Let me just show you what do I mean by reading the questions. Let's say if we choose any of the year question, maybe one of the recent years, 5054, paper 2. So this is a section A where we have all the topic stuffs and everything, and then comes section B. Section B, you have to answer 2 questions on the section, answer in the spaces provided. So what I usually recommend, have a glance through the section B questions. You don't have to read the question all through, just have a look at which topics did the question come from and what kind of questions they are gonna have to approach. For example, this first question is coming from the wave chapter. So this is a lot of from the wave, and then we have some additional stuff within this same chapter. We have some additional question from the radioactivity chapter as well. So this is a table that comes from radioactivity chapter, and we have some question regarding Coulomb and second. So we are asked to some current as well. So this is a bit of a composite question which actually touches multiple different topics of the syllabus. We first have the wave, then we have a bit of a current chapter, electricity chapter, then we have a bit from the atomic physics. The second question number 10, is from the heat chapter. Describe 2 differences between boiling and evaporation. So you have to approach this question. Then we have a pretty huge calculation for the heat capacity calculation stuffs. These questions are usually pretty simple, but what is usually a bit, what can I say, tricky about the thermal chapter is that within the thermal chapter, the calculation volume can be made to be pretty large, but in terms of number, there are too few mathematical formula. So in most of the questions, a significant portion of the thermal chapter takes for word-based description. So you can see over here that here we had a 6-mark question which is word-based. We have a 2 and 3 5-mark question which is math out of 10, and then the remaining marks also, once again, 4 2 and 2 is also descriptive questions, which means out of this 15-mark question you have 10 marks where you have to write words and score marks, and only 5 marks is math. It's possible, very much possible, to score full marks within the descriptive questions as well, provided you know what you are writing about. And one of the important thing that you have to understand, I mean, the way I prefer to teach the syllabus is that, first of all, you need to understand what the physics concept behind a certain thing, behind a certain topic is. So understanding the underlying principle by which a certain thing governs itself, for example, let's say, how does heat transfer happen? And for most part, of your syllabus, even all the way up to A2, in many cases, the why question wouldn't be described too well. Rather, we'd be mostly handling the uh, how and what question. So what happens and how that happens. So mostly the decision making question. So what happens, where you might have to describe what happens, and how is basically about uh, how that physical process actually takes place. What are the physical variables, changes, and everything. The why part is not always discussed, because in many cases the actual underlying principle for many of the why questions can prove to be quite far-fetched for the difficulty level that you are aiming for. For example, if you are trying to understand that what happens for a thermal, if you're trying to define what is the thermal energy of an object, and that seems like a very simple question, but answering that question can prove to be difficult because the thermal energy within an object actually is the combination of all the microscopic, kinetic, and the energies and the potential energy that lies within the objects in between particles. So it can have multiple different expressions for solid materials, liquid materials, or gas material. So the key definition that why an object can have thermal energy can be quite descriptive and difficult. But how does heat flow actually occur? There's a very simple answer to this. For example, heat energy always travels from high temperature to low temperature, and there is no alteration, or there is no exception of this rule. So that definition part is not going to be taught to you at this level, which you're going to handle in your A2 level for the more deeper discussion of the thermal chapter. But you have to know that heat energy travels from high temperature to low temperature and such other things. Point that I'm trying to tell you that in this case, that in many places, because you are supposed to be inquisitive and you should think about a certain topic with depth, you might have quite a good number of why questions within your head, and your syllabus content might not be relevant for those why questions. It's perfectly all right to have those why questions. If you have those questions in your head at any point of time, please ask. In appropriate cases where it is relevant to the syllabus, I'll definitely go in deep conversation about those. And cases where it is not relevant to your syllabus, I might actually do some subsurface discussion. And if you're still interested to know even more, I might direct you to the relevant books or relevant topics from the internet where you can actually learn about more about them, for if you're interested to spend some time of your own and learn about these stuffs in a much bigger scale, which is possible to do. And this is one of the first things that you have to primarily understand: how does a certain thing work, and how the mathematical formula come into place to make a certain calculation work and everything. That's one part of your duty. Many students might feel like that, well, that if we understand the underlying principle of physics, that's basically it. I mean, we don't have to know anything more. I disagree with this part, because the metric or the measurement of how much do you actually understand for a certain subject material, this is actually true for all the subjects that you have, is judged upon how well you can express that in terms of writing, be it MCQ question writing, be it some laboratory experiment, paper 3, or some structured question writing. You have to be able to express your capability that you understand. So you have to make the examiner understand that you understand it. That's where your capability lies. You understand something, but you're not able to explain it. You're not able to describe it properly in the specific set of words or in the specific set of mechanism or phrases that the examiners would like to see in your copy, then you are not going to score that mark. And to be told, at the end of the day, you will be judged grossly upon how much mark do you get. Because if you think that you might know pretty good stuff or very much deep about a certain topic, but if a person is about to judge you on the first basis, they're definitely gonna look out for your results, that what grade did you score. I mean, if you get a poor grade but you have a good understanding, in many cases you might not even get the opportunity to represent that you have a good understanding of the topic. And the vice versa is also true. If someone scores a good mark and they don't have a good understanding of the topic, that can also happen. Given a certain type of practice habit, it can be achieved. Then also they're going to get stumbled upon a lot of difficult cases in their further studies. For example, if you have a hollow idea about stuffs, but you somehow get through your O levels pretty well, you get A stars and pretty high marks. Eventually, whenever you're gonna pick up if it's in your AS and A2 level, those hollow ideas are gonna make you suffer. You have to understand what happens when, and in many cases, why that happens or how that happens. I'm gonna help you to understand these stuffs. That's the part that I'm responsible for. What I primarily ask the students is that you kids do not take your questions with you. You don't keep your questions with you. You need to understand this thing very clearly. You have been studying physics since class 8. Most of the schools start their syllabus from class 8. You've been learning these stuffs. You have learned general science, water cycle, and then carbon cycle in your earlier classes in geography or normal science chapters. Then the question is that why is it that we are having this class? I mean, why you people are here? Ask yourself that question. You kids are here so that you can have a guided journey towards completing this syllabus. The way I prefer to describe my responsibility towards teaching a certain syllabus towards for the kids is that I am responsible for making sure that primarily you don't dislike the subject. That's my first goal, that primarily you do not dislike the subject. I'm not saying I make you like the subject, because it is possible that you might not like the subject at all. If you wonder why should that happen and why am I telling you this, it's a very simple thing. Here's the deal. Not all of us think in the same way. Not all of us have the same way of judging world. Not all of us have the same type of understanding towards the same thing. Some of us are good in music, where other people can be good in math. Some of us may be good in, let's say, gossiping, where other people might be good in sleeping. So what I'm trying to tell you is that different people have different type of mental build and different type of ways to judge a certain scenario. Whenever I'm giving a certain sentence out to describe a certain scenario, there might be multiple different phrases within that sentence or definition or a certain topic's explanation. Different students might pick up different phrase as the predominant clause within their head. So understanding is a thing which is a dynamic process, and that can vary from person to person. So if you can understand a certain topic, the way I define my job is to make sure that whether it's a difficult topic or it's an easier topic, whether you get it easily or whether you have some difficulty towards understanding and solving some problems of a specific topic, all in all, you don't start to dislike the subject. That's how I feel like. And one pretty common way to make the students like a certain thing or make anyone like a certain thing is that whenever their efforts are rewarded. And it's pretty simple. I mean, if you're playing a game and you are not leveling up as much as you expect, you might as well lose interest in that game. The game might as well be pretty interesting for many other people, maybe most other people, but if you're not getting the results that you think that you deserve with respect to your effort level, you might lose interest. So that's basically where the mark scoring part comes in. So I'm going to teach you how to understand a certain topic. I'll try. And also how to write a certain answer properly as well. If you wonder how does that work, this is how it works. Let me show you a simple example. তোমরা স্কুলে তো সবাই বেসিক কাইনেমেটিক্স চ্যাপ্টার পড়ছো, মানে হচ্ছে মোশন রিলেটেড চ্যাপ্টারস গুলা ক্লাস 8 এ পড়াছেন এগুলা? Yes sir. Like displacement, velocity, acceleration, equations of motions, vt graph, time graphs, and so on and so forth. I have a pretty what can I say? Let me just show you. It will make sense. Okay. Let's say This is compilation 1 of 24. So there are too many compilations. I don't actually recall all the name of these compilation parts. I made this quite a long time ago. These are some year question compilation. So these are not nothing that I have made myself, but I just sorted them for better understanding. So what is happening here? Let's say this is the first question of this thing. This is from, I think, a pretty early year. The question says that a figure 1 point. Let me pick up a difficult question, maybe where we might have some good description. All right, yeah. Question number 11. Have a look at this question. I have a reason to show you these questions, and I'm going to slowly start with getting on to the lecture, but I'm trying to show you that how we are going to approach the syllabus in general terms. That's what I'm trying to show you. Okay. The question says that figure 1.1 shows a cricket ball as it comes into contact with a cricket bat. The cricket ball has a mass of 0.16 kg and it hits the bat with a speed of 25 meters per second. After being in contact with the bat for 0.0013 seconds, the ball rebounds with a speed of 22 meters per second in the direction exactly opposite to its original direction. State the difference between speed and velocity. This is basically a definition question, so you just write about it and move on. Then it says calculate the change in the velocity of the cricket ball. So you have to write about the velocity change, the average acceleration of the ball whilst it is in contact with the bat. You have to find out the acceleration. Maybe you know the formula. Acceleration is given by delta v over t. The average force exerted on the ball by the bat, and that's pretty much it. It's a very simple question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mark question. The key idea that is interesting for this whole question, the change in velocity of the cricket ball. If you have a look at the solution of this paper, of this question number 11, let's have a look for the question number 11 solve. Here is the question number 11 solved. This is what we call the mark scheme and the examiner's report compilation, and 11M is the actual mark scheme. 11E, on the other hand, is the examiner's report. Examiner's report is a pretty interesting thing. After the results are published, somewhere around, let's say 2 to 3 months after the results are published, SAE publishes a general principal examiner's report about the whole paper. This goes for the whole paper. Each individual questions are discussed in the principal examiner's term, where they basically discuss that how this question could be better answered, what is the most common misconception of the students over here, what are the most common difficulty that the students face that they think, and how well this question could be answered. Basically, as a teacher, whatever I could have told you about better performing for a specific question, that's basically examiner's report. So if you have a look over here, this question says the velocity has direction or vector, speed does not have a direction or is not a vector, or displacement versus time is speed and distance over time is so displacement versus time, displacement divided by time is velocity and distance divided by time is speed. So if you write about these definitions, you're going to score this 1 mark. Ignore speed is a scalar. So if someone writes the speed is a scalar quantity and velocity is a vector quantity, it's not going to work out. You have to specify that the direction involved within this part. Then have a look in question number B. It says minus 47 meters per second. The minus is given in bracket. Now this is the important bit. If you have a look over here, it says the ball comes in and hits the bat with a speed of 25 meters per second. After being in contact with the bat for 0.0013 seconds, which is the collision duration, pretty small, the ball rebounds with a speed of 22 meters per second in the direction exactly opposite to its original direction. That's the important bit. Which means that if you consider for this question, let's say if the ball was coming in from this direction, let's say this was the bat, and this is your U. Let's say U is 25 meters per second. And after collision, the ball rebounds in this direction at 22 meters per second. Now, being vector quantity, what is pretty important that if you consider this initial velocity towards left as a positive velocity, if you want to consider the left direction velocity as positive velocity, towards right, the final velocity has to be defined with a negative value, because being vector, they are relevant to their direction. So you cannot consider both of these velocities to have positive values. That would be wrong. So if you consider it in this manner, and then you can calculate the delta v, the change of velocity would be v minus u, that gives you minus 22 minus 25. Ultimately, you get minus 47. Some people might work it the other way around. Some people might think that the bat is over here and the initial velocity of the ball goes this way, that is 25 meters per second, which is positive, and then the rebound velocity is minus 22 meters per second. Sorry, I messed up. I was trying to show the other way around. So if someone assumes that, sorry, I can use the same figure. So this is for the minus 47 meters per second. So that's one possibility. The other possibility can be, some people can consider that towards right is the positive direction and consider the initial velocity to be have a negative value, whereas the final velocity to be positive. It is also possible and acceptable. In which direction you're going to consider your positive direction, that's a privilege that you have on your own, that you can choose. But your math should be congruent with that assumption as you slowly work on your math. So in that scenario, the change of velocity can be also v minus u, which is going to be 22 minus 25, gives you 47 meter per second. Important bit that for one type of consideration, you can have minus sign involved. For the other type of consideration, you can have 47 involved. But being velocity, you cannot simply do 25 minus 22 equals to 3. That would be wrong altogether, because that's not how vector quantities work. So the answer actually says that it should be by magnitude 47. There might be a minus mentioned in the answer. There might not be a minus mentioned in the answer. That's why they have given this minus sign within bracket, which means this is optional. If someone writes with this minus sign, they're still going to get this mark. If someone does not write this minus sign, they're still going to get this mark. No big deal. In number 2, acceleration goes to v by t of 47 divided by 0.0013, and then they can get this value. And finally, this is the full answer. Now, there is a certain thing that's called ECF. I'm going to talk about ECF a bit later. And then the force is coming by F equals to ma, and this is the total answer of this working. Have a look at this thing. This part was almost always answered correctly, with only a very small number of candidates offering the definition of acceleration instead of that of velocity, which means this first question that we had stated the difference between speed and velocity was in most cases correctly answered, because it was a 1-mark question. So if you write the definitions properly, you still score the mark. If you write the mathematical expression that speed is distance over time, velocity equals to distance over time, you still score the mark. So scoring this 1 mark was not a big deal. As per the examiner's report, pretty much everyone scored this mark. But for B, it says many candidates gave the answer is 3 meter per second. 47 meter per second was surprisingly infrequent, which means many students did not consider this situation where the initial velocity and the final velocity should be considered as vector quantities. And if we consider one of them to be positive, the other one should be considered negative. So 47 meter per second was surprisingly infrequent. This tells you that what is the most common type of misconception, or maybe the lack of understanding, or maybe the misreading of the students was students were reading this question, but they actually, although they read the question that find out the difference in velocity, calculate the change in the velocity, maybe they did not bother to consider this velocity as a vector quantity in their head when they're doing this calculation. So they just subtracted these two numbers and got 3. So 47 was quite infrequent. That's the report, examiner's report about P1. Number 2 says the correct definition of acceleration was commonly given, and many candidates correctly used the wrong answer from B1 and were awarded partial credit. Partial credit, this is basically what we call ECF. ECF means error carried forward, which means if you mess up a certain calculation in a certain part of a math and you use that answer for subsequent calculation, logically all of your subsequent calculations should be also wrong. But you will be only penalized for one mistake in one place. Subsequent calculations, if they are correct with the wrong values even, you're gonna get full marks. So if some student write over here 3 meter per second, they're not gonna get this mark. But if they use the 3 meter per second and calculate the acceleration with the 3 meter per second and write a correct answer, that is 3 divided by 0.0013, whatever that number becomes, they're gonna score full 2 marks over here. That's what we call ECF, error carried forward. So the error was made over here, you're gonna be penalized right over here. You're not gonna be penalized over here. This is how CAE works, which is a good thing. And then it says the average force exerted on the ball by the bat. So F equals to ma. Once again, if you use this acceleration value and calculate the force, your final answer would be definitely different from what the correct answer as the mark scheme shows. But if your acceleration calculation was wrong, you are gonna definitely get this one wrong as well. So, but still, you're gonna get that ECF mark. So if you don't understand the concept of velocity, you're gonna lose your mark over here. But if you understand the other parts, acceleration is given by delta v over t and F equals to ma, you might as well get full marks for these 2 questions as well. So that's what the examiner's report is about. Now, why am I showing you this? You're gonna have access to all of this paper, the entire paper 2 compilation, also this whole solution thing as well. E is represent the examiner's report and M represents the mark scheme. I'm not asking you to take a very hard amount of effort to be able to remember all of these stuffs. But what I essentially recommend, whenever you're going to solve your papers, which you're going to solve eventually, you're going to have access to these papers in bundles. read through the examiner's report of a certain question. Even if you solve that question right, even if you wrote everything over here, you score full marks in your own judgment, and your mathematical work is perfect, all right, still at least once read the examiner's report. Try to find out whether there is anything else about that thing, about that question, that might be within there that you did not consider. Furthermore, the way examiner's report are very helpful is that uh, if someone tells you that this is a question and this question is most likely to be mistaken by this and this way, so be careful not to make this mistake in this and this way. If someone already tells you that information, you'd be most likely be safe from those most common mistakes. That's another huge advantage for examiner's report. So reading the examiner report at least once gives you a pretty good idea for how you should have judged the problem, what kind of misjudgment you might have had. Maybe you didn't do that, but you'd be made aware of that. And additionally, in many cases, you might find important information which I might not have told you in the class, but which is present in the examiner's report, and you can highlight those stuffs. And these parts which you're going to highlight, either whether in the mark scheme or in the examiner's report, or maybe in your worksheet as well. So if you're doing your worksheet, let's say you are solving this paper, you find this question good, that you need to revise it, so you can put a star mark over here. And before any test, even if your actual O-levels exam, you're gonna study up these star mark information, all the stuff that you know you're good at, all the stuff that you did not ever label to be important for you to think, you can skip revising those. So the benefit of this whole thing is that as you're slowly gonna solve the whole syllabus, you're gonna have a much concise amount of effort spaces which you should study the night before the exam. This takes a huge load off, and in most cases gives you a really good night's sleep, which is really important, and a huge confidence boost as well. If you know that I have prepared for all of my weak spots, and the other spots which are not weak, I'm generally good, I don't have to be worried about those stuffs. You pretty much have a 100% of your preparation. At least that's the way I understand what is 100% preparation should be. That you know stuffs, there are certain stuffs that you mess up, you have prepared yourself so that you don't do that mess up. That's basically 100% preparation. So that's how I'm gonna help you go through the syllabus. You are gonna have to learn, you have to understand the underlying principle for why a certain thing works in a certain way that works. And then also you have to understand, or I can use the word, you have to adopt the appropriate way to write answers. এটা হচ্ছে একটা জিনিস। সেকেন্ড একটা জিনিস হচ্ছে আমি অনেক তাড়াতাড়ি কথা বলি, I speak quite fast. This is a habit that I have, which has been pretty old. I have tried deliberately and alertly to slow down my pace of talking, which in many cases makes me distracted from the actual subject material that I'm talking about. So my earnest request, if you need me to slow down in my talking speed, please say it so. Just raise your hand, write in the chat window. If it's a physical class, just say it out loud. Start a class. You don't have to raise your hand even. Just alert me immediately that I am going too fast, so I need to slow down. This is perfectly all right. This is not gonna make me infuriated. I am not gonna be bothered by it. I know that I have this shortcoming that I talk quite fast. I speak quite fast, talk quite fast. Whatever. The verb, the appropriate verb should be here. But let me know. If you need me to slow down, let me know. The other thing that is pretty important for my course is that you need to ask me questions. Here's the deal. The thing that I was talking about a bit earlier, that why are we here? Why are we having this session? Why are we meeting in an online Zoom client 2 hours twice every week? What's the purpose of this whole thing? Why are we going through this shabang? The point is that I'm going to try to direct you towards an easier and easy to accomplish way for the aim that you have. But truth be told, it is you who have to accomplish that goal. I am just here to give you directions. I'm here just to make the process less difficult for you, more bearable for you. At the end of the day, তোমাকেই পরীক্ষা দিতে হবে, তুমিই গ্রেডস পাবা, সার্টিফিকেটে তোমারই নাম আসবে। I'm only here, we're only having these classes so that I can help you get good results with limited effort, less effort. That's basically my job, and your job is to make sure that happens. So it goes without saying, if you understand that teachers are responsible to enable the kids to have good results or elevate them from their original level towards a higher level. So if you're a student who was supposed to get a poor grade, I should try. It should be my endeavor to enable you to achieve a better grade. So that's basically the concrete idea of this whole coaching stuff. How can that happen effectively? I mean, exactly how that happens. It comes from problem solving. If you know what is it that you do not know, that practically solves the problem by more than half. For example, let's say within the whole kinematics chapter, there are a lot of topics. There are definitions: distance, displacement, velocity, acceleration, force, Newton's laws. We have the 3 laws over here. And then we have the equations of motions. We have multiple different time graphs. We have the conversion of one type of time graph to another type of time graph. We have increasing gradient, decreasing gradient, what means when, what means what, why that means that. We have the vector diagrams, triangle rule, parallelogram rule, and whatnot. We have the stuffs for what we have further calculation regarding what else do we have? We have the parachutist graph, we have the air resistance, and such things. I am assuming, because I believe all of you are going to some school, none of you are in private, I think. কেউ কি প্রাইভেটে আসো নাকি সবাই স্কুলে যাও?
সবাই স্কুলে মনে হয়।
আচ্ছা, জাওয়াদ, তুমি মাস্টারমাইন্ড, রাইট? যা, তোমার কথা শুনি না কেন? আমি দেখছি তোমার মাইক্রোফোন আপ ডাউন করছে, বাট আই ক্যানট হিয়ার ইউ। Why is that? Jad, could you speak up a bit louder? Yeah, we can hear you right now. এখানে জাবিরের ভাইকে তুমি? জাবিরের, হ্যাঁ তুমি জাবিরের ভাই, রাইট? আহমেদ মুসাব্বির জাওয়াদ, হ্যাঁ। আচ্ছা, জাস্ট কুইক কোয়েরি, রাহিম নবী আনোয়ার, এখানে তোমরা একই সেকশনে কারা কারা? সবাই কি এখানে মাস্টারমাইন্ডের?
স্যার আই থিংক আমি, তাইসির, নূর এন্ড জাওয়াদ মাস্টারমাইন্ডের।
স্যার আমি স্কলাস্টিকার।
আচ্ছা, মুহতাসিম তুমি স্কলাস্টিকার, ওকে। তোমার আশা কই?
স্যার মোহাম্মদপুর।
Oh, I would have been pretty close. আমার কোচিং লালমাটিয়াতে ছিল, যদি আমি এখন চিটাং থেকে ক্লাস নিচ্ছি, সবকিছু অনলাইন থেকে চিটাং থেকে ম্যানেজ করতেছি, বাট কোচিং থেকে সব ম্যাটেরিয়াল ডেভেলপমেন্ট, ম্যাটেরিয়াল রিসোর্সমেন্ট এবং সব ফিজিক্যাল এক্সচেঞ্জেস গুলো সব লালমাটিয়া ডি ব্লক কোচিং থেকে হচ্ছে। আচ্ছা, এনিওয়ে, একটা জিনিস বলি। সো আমি অনেকগুলো টপিকের নাম বললাম। I said that some of the names, or maybe all the names of the topic that consists of the whole kinematics and dynamics chapter. Now, what is important that if you have studied those stuffs, even by little, you should have some idea, if not a detailed idea, you should have some idea that which of these topics seem bugging for you, which of these topics or which of these concepts seem to be difficult for you to observe. For example, maybe describing the parachutist graph in terms of energy conversion seems to be difficult for you. Maybe handling the vector diagrams seems to be difficult. Maybe you can draw the vector diagram pretty well, but finally the way you have to write the answer, that part seems difficult for you. Maybe within the graph manipulation, increasing the gradient, decreasing gradient, and those variations for VT graph or displacement time graph or acceleration time graph, how to manipulate this one type of information into another type of information whenever you're trying to describe the motion of a certain object by looking at the given graph. So you might have difficulty. I mean, maybe you are good at describing a VT graph, but you're not so good at describing the DT graph. Now, if you know which part of this thing or which parts of this whole
list of topic that I just said, you are poor at, if you know that thing, then you can direct additional effort towards that thing, and you can ask for help about those things to your teacher. Maybe it's me, maybe your school teacher, maybe it's applicable for the subject, really doesn't matter. Maybe it's your elder brother, maybe someone that you consider to be a mentor. You can ask anyone who you feel comfortable with to get help about those things. So defining the problem practically solves the problem by a whole much. If you know specifically what you cannot do, then you can solve that problem. But if you have a gradual idea, for example, like আমি মোশনের চ্যাপ্টার কিছুই পারি না, দ্যাটস এ প্লেন লাই। তুমি ডেফিনেশন পারো, তুমি ফর্মুলা পারো, তুমি ম্যাথসও করতে পারো, বাট তুমি কখনোই ফুল মার্কস পাও না। কেন ফুল মার্কস পাও না? বিকজ কিছু কিছু জিনিস তুমি কম পারো। Sometimes you miss, or maybe all the times you are missing full marks, but you're never getting less than 60%, or never getting less than 80%. So you have a lacking of accomplishing a further 20% or maybe 40% of the whole thing. You need to be able to specify that. That's very important. The moment you are able to specify your own problem, that from that moment onwards, you can start elevating yourself. That's basically up leveling yourself. That's progress. তুমি একটা জিনিস পারো, ওটাই তুমি কন্টিনিউয়াসলি করতেছো এবং ওটাই তুমি কন্টিনিউয়াসলি ভালো মতন করতেছো, এবং যেটা পারো না সেটাকে তুমি ডিসরিগার্ড করতেছো because you find it difficult, that's why you apparently don't have any interest in it. You are not gonna get better grades. You're pretty much gonna get stuck over there. If you want to get a better grade, if you want to get a better understanding, if you want to get towards a higher level of understanding and mark scoring capability of your current state, you have to specify which it is that you lack. And once you can do that, this is the first part that is pretty important. It's generally true for pretty much everything. I mean, everything. Even in life as well. I mean, many of us have difficulty facing problem. Many of us have the problem of procrastination. Many of us have the problem of what can I say, of not being able to sleep at night, because I have that problem. I can say it out loud, because I am somewhat fascinated by the calmness of night and no one disturbing me. I'm in my PC doing 9gagging and YouTubing and playing Dota or whatever, but no one is asking me questions, no one is giving me phone calls, no one is sending me obligatory to reply messages in WhatsApp or Messenger. So that's a pretty peaceful time. Not gonna happen if you're in the daytime. So many of us have multiple different ways of our problem. If you want to solve something, you need to first define the problem. That's really, really important. Once you define the problem, you can ask for help, you can set up some plans, try multiple different strategies, and eventually, if you have a good gut feeling towards solving the problem, you will be able to solve that problem. And where does I come in? আমার কাজটা হচ্ছে, you have to understand this part, সেটা হচ্ছে being a teacher এখন এই সিচুয়েশনটা আরো বেশি ডিফিকাল্ট। সেটা হচ্ছে আগে যখন whenever there were physical classes before the whole COVID thing, and whenever I was, let's say I'm delivering a lecture to, let's say 10-15 kids, the moment I actually finish a certain part of discussion and I expect to have some sort of feedback from the students, if I just take a quick look at all the students' eyes, I could pretty well, not 100%, definitely not 100%, I could pretty well say that which of the students has not been listening to my lecture for this part, for this whole time, which of the kids have been pretending to listen to my lecture, but they haven't been listening. I mean, they have been looking to me, they haven't been side talking, they are not doing anything else, they have been looking at me for the full time, but in their eyes and in their brain, they were not in the class, they were someplace else, cloud 9 maybe, I don't care. And some people genuinely can show that they have questions about it, but and then I could take care of those problems following those people one at a time, that what is the problem that I could possibly solve. But that's not the case for an online class. And I personally don't like to have my video cameras on because I take class in a very casual state. I prefer it that way. And having the video cameras on for all the students, I find it's somewhat distracting as well, because if one of the students starts do some goofy stuff, everyone pops up their window and everyone is willing to go do that, and managing that thing can, in my opinion, is actually pretty difficult other than managing it in the physical classes. I'm just not into the whole video camera feed thing. You guys are here, you're listening to me. If you want to do good, Service is here. If you don't want to do good, you don't have to be here. Simple. And so what is it that my request? My request to all of you is that you have to understand that I am a teacher, but I am not a psychic. I cannot tell what happens within your head. If you have a certain question and if you don't ask me, I have to assume, and I will assume, that you don't have any question. You should ask me that question. So if you have any question, if you should ask me that question. Use the voice chat. If you are not comfortable in the voice chat, if your voice chat is not working for some reason, write that up in the all chat. We're gonna look it up and you're gonna answer you. I'm gonna answer you. One thing is very important. Listen to me very carefully for this information. There are no stupid questions. There is no stupid question. Every question is important. There can be only silly answers. Whatever the question that you have, you always prefer to ask them. It can happen sometimes that, let's say I'm giving you a part of a lecture, you raise your hand at a certain point and I allow you to ask that question, let's say 30 seconds, 1 minute later, because I want to finish up a certain part of my sentence or certain part of my lecture. That can happen. Maybe you might get your answer within that part, maybe you wouldn't. Then I'm gonna take some time to allow you to ask that question. But please do ask your questions. Whenever you have questions, please do ask your questions. This is a common request. I always try to answer everyone's questions, whoever raise their hands. There are certain students of mine who usually don't ever ask questions, but they are pretty careful to listen to everyone else's answer questions. And anytime if I'm making one-to-one contact to them, I usually ask them that you don't ask them to ask any question. In many cases, what I get, the reply that I get is, sir, another question করে, so ওখান থেকে আমার answer হয়ে যায়. Then, but still, I always try to tell them that if you have any question of your own, please do ask your question. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm paid to answer your questions. We are having this whole session so that I can answer your questions. And you can only have questions if you think about something, if you work towards something, if you put hard labor into something. একটা জিনিস খেয়াল করো, দেখো দুই টাইপের এন্টিটির কোনো রকম ভুল হয় না। I mean, দুই টাইপের মানুষের, let's say, দুই টাইপের মানুষের কোনো রকম ভুল হয় না। The first type of people who never make mistakes are, let's say, God level people, because they are so good at something, they never make mistakes. The second type of people who never make mistakes are the people who never do anything. Lazy people, procrastinating people. Because they don't do anything, they don't do mistakes. Now, if you don't have questions, if you don't ever do mistakes, you either have to belong to the first people, that you know everything so well that you don't make mistakes, or you don't do anything, you don't do shit. So that's why you don't make any mess up. I believe that most of us, maybe all of us, belong to the in-between region. So we are good at something, we are not good at something. So please ask me questions. Whatever the question that you have, if you need me to repeat something, do that as well. I'm going to repeat that part for you, no big deal. Most of your lectures will be recorded. I'm recording this lecture right now and it will be uploaded in my YouTube channel as public videos. So if you ever need to revise a certain topic, if you mess up a certain part of the lecture, you can have a look at that as well. But just because YouTube lectures will be available for your future feedback, don't choose to be less attentive in your actual class. Because on a random day, if you ask me that, sir, oikhankar oi jinish bujhi nai, oita bujhai den, I am responsible to explain that to you, but I cannot guarantee you when that's going to happen. But in class, it should happen almost immediately. Yes, Taisi, go ahead.
Sir, for example, ধরবেন যে একদিন হলো আমি কোনো কারণে ক্লাস করতে পারলাম না, and you uploaded the lecture on YouTube, and I have a question. So, sir, the question থেকে আমি আপনাকে ইউটিউবের কমেন্ট সেকশন জিজ্ঞেস করবো নাকি ফেসবুকে, like ওই পার্টটা পিনপয়েন্ট করে?
You can ask it anywhere as you feel comfortable. You can ask the question directly in the YouTube comment section. I might actually answer you in the comment section as well. If you ask me, if you take the time instance by right clicking that, copy the link at the current time, and if you send me a message that's a video, a time instance, a question ta chilo, if you send me the question in the messenger, I might respond to you in the messenger. It's your choice, whatever you feel comfortable. All right, so that's that. আমি অনেক হাউকাউ করলাম, বাট বুঝা যাচ্ছে কিনা যে কি হবে এই ক্লাসে? এনি কোশ্চেন সো ফার? অ্যাপারেন্টলি নো। আচ্ছা, এখানে যে জিনিসগুলো দেখাচ্ছিলাম, দেখানোর পর আবার হচ্ছে অন্য জিনিস পরে চলে গেছে। সেটা হচ্ছে সেকশন বি তে প্র্যাকটিক্যালি আমাদের দুইটা কোশ্চেন থাকে। সরি, you have to answer two questions from section B. The question that I was trying to show you was from here. Actually, maybe I can find it from here. Okay, yes. So This second question is about from the thermal chapter, and then the third question is from, and you can see that whenever you're looking at it, you should be able to see that this question has a pretty huge amount of writing answers, and only 5 marks is for mathematical working. So if you are not so, if you don't prefer to write descriptive questions too much, which I don't, because scoring full marks in mathematical questions are usually pretty easier, in my opinion, if your preparation is well, comparatively to the comparatively than to score for descriptive questions or word questions. And then question number 11 is about wave chapter. It says a water wave is produced in a ripple tank. Draw a diagram of a ripple tank and describe how it is used to produce the house of the wave. So in this case, you have to draw an actual ripple tank, which is sort of a three-dimensional figure, and you have to describe how to use that thing. And this is also from wave chapter. Describe water wave in ripple tank. The water wave in the ripple tank transfers energy. Describe how to show that there is a transfer of energy. So you have to explain that experiment. State what is meant by a wavefront. So you have to give a definition that is detailed enough to score you full 2 marks. So you have a total 8-mark question over here, which might seem somewhat scary. Whereas over here in B number of question, you have some graph questions, and then over here you have some mathematical questions. Just skim through the section B questions once, take 5-10 minutes. I really don't care. It's perfectly all right no matter how much time it takes, but just you don't have to read the whole thing. Just have a look, have a glance at the 3 questions, and immediately jump back to section A and start answering questions from section A from the very beginning. So, and then you just directly start from here, read the question and actually solve it and write the answers I'm going to go for. What's going to happen by the time you'll be done with your section A, 45 marks, let's say you finish it within 45 minutes at max, you shouldn't take more than 45 minutes. It's very much possible to solve it well under 45 minutes, but I'm saying that maximum time you should take shouldn't be more than 45 minutes. By the time you'll be done with your section A, you will have within your head the choice made. You'd know that which are the 2 questions that you would prefer to answer, and you can directly jump into those section B questions and start answering the questions that you prefer. So you don't have to take time to actually think which one is it you're going to answer, which is it not going to answer, and you're not going to run into problems like that. Let's say you have started to answer a question, halfway through the question you find a 3 or 4 mark question that you find it difficult to answer. Maybe let's say if it so happened that within this 11 number question, they actually put this mathematical question first, and then as the last part they gave this question. Let's say some students see this mathematical question, they find, well, there are mathematical questions, beautiful, only 2 mark definition. They write this whole mathematical answers, and then they come across and find that, oh my goodness, here now we have to draw a 3-dimensional figure for the ripple tank, and then you have to describe all this stuff. That's difficult. So that this kind of mishap doesn't happen with you, so that you know what you're going to get into. That's what I always recommend. Read section B questions, jump to section A, finish section A. By the time you're done with section A, you know in your heart which 2 questions from section B you're going to answer. Go ahead and answer that. This discussion that I'm doing with you right now might not as well be required all the way up to your until your O levels, because whenever your school exams will happen, in many cases you might find that the teachers are not making questions exactly with this exact pattern. You might have a full compulsory paper of exactly 75 marks, or maybe 100 marks with some amount of time duration, and from which you are going to be taking percentages, and eventually your final results are going to come on. That can totally happen. But even eventually, whenever you will be sitting for your O levels exam, that's the method that I do recommend. Beyond that thing, we have paper 3. Paper 3 is basically the lab paper. So this is the actual lab. This is a 2-hour exam having a mark of 30. We can either choose to appear that, or we can also register for paper 4, which is alternative to lab. Alternative to practical. This is a 1-hour written exam without handling any actual instrument, where you will be given diagrams and figures and tables of multiple different stuffs. You have to write about how to use those, how to do calculations, and so on and so forth. This basically checks your entire capability of the lab experiment as well. So these 2 papers are optional. You can choose either of these. You can register for any of these. CA allows this as well. So this is also 30 marks. Now, paper 3, paper 4 discussions can be left out for a later part, because this is not something that I'm going to teach you for this course. But it can also happen later on eventually if the physical classes do get started and we actually get the opportunity to do lab classes with you. Maybe we'll talk about this in due time. I mean, I'm not preferring to talk about it right now. Unnecessary for me for the timing. So we will be mostly solving these things over here. The worksheet compilations that I have are actually from, as far as I remember, S02 through S13. So that's about 11 years, I think, something like that, or 12 years session. You do understand SNW of the exam session, all of you? Acha, basic questions. Do you guys all know how to download question papers?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Acha. If you don't know, you can ask me, I'll show you. You can download them from Papa Cambridge, you can download them from GC Guide. These are two most organized websites that are currently in use, as in my opinion. Extreme Papers used to be pretty good, but then CIE actually plunged some uh, legislative stuffs onto them because they were finicking with some out questions or leaked questions. So that's why Extreme Papers hasn't been as good since then. But Papa Cambridge and GC Guide, they are both pretty well organized, have pretty much everything. So there's that. আর তোমাদের কারো কোনো কোশ্চেন থাকলে আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করতে পারো, এনিথিং, if you have any question to ask me. If you don't, then we'll directly jump into the first chapter.
Sir, in many question papers, there are things like 21, 22, and like the same year but different numbers. So which one will we use, or which one will we download?
For past year, you should download everything. Those 21, 22, for example, if I just show you from my folder, it was somewhere in my folder. Where is that? Actually, let's go there. Yes, if we just jump into this paper, the 21, 22, these are basically the paper number and then the variant number. The variant number is that CA exam happens all over the globe. It's not possible to take an exam, let's say that is at 12 a.m., 12 p.m. over here, and then that same question to save the uniform checking or uniform, what can I say, grading mechanism. If you want to take the same exam all over the world, some people might have to appear exams at 12 a.m. in the night. So what they do is that they have divided the whole geographic region into multiple geographic regions, and different people have different variant. So for example, this QP12 means this is paper 1 variant 2. So this is for geographic region 2, and then you can have 1 1, and these are the two variants that these people used to have for that region 14. So maybe some people appeared for the exam in pretty early in the morning, some people were appearing pretty much in the late, and some people were appearing in between, but there were two different sets. If you're looking forward to practice, you should practice the whole thing, or both of them. But ultimately, for which paper are you going to sit for, that is defined upon your geographic region. For example, for you people are, I think in Bangladesh we go for the variant 2. I can show this to you, how you can find this thing. Cambridge region of Bangladesh. Okay, which Cambridge region? Administrative zone. Yeah, here we got it. So here is the thing. This is the CA website. You can go from here, and where is B, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Australia, it's Bangladesh, Dhaka. So yeah, we are in the administrative zone of zone 4. Okay, so zone 4, this is our administrative zone, and zone 4 usually go for paper 2 as far as I remember. দেখাচ্ছি। এই যে administrative zone 4. Let's say this was the exam timetable for June 2021. So এই বছর যাদের এক্সাম হওয়ার কথা ছিল হয় নাই, তাদের ইয়া হচ্ছে এটা। সো এইখানে দেখলে তুমি পাবা হচ্ছে জোন 4 এর পোলাপানদের পরীক্ষা কোনটা, ক্যামব্রিজ ও লেভেল সিলেবাস ওয়াইজ ক্যামব্রিজ ও লেভেল। If I go over here, pretty small font but should be workable. For example, P is over here, physics 505422. Yes, you kids are gonna sit for the variant 2. Here you can see that physics is 22 and then is practical 32 or in practical 42, which means you're gonna go for variant 2 pretty much for all of your subjects in O levels. That's the variant that you're gonna sit for. But if you're trying to go for some practice, I always recommend, or every teacher will recommend, that you practice both the papers because that's good. বুঝে গেছে?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা আমি তোমাদেরকে মানে অফ দ্য সিলেবাস একটা জিনিস যেটা রেকমেন্ড করবো সেটা হচ্ছে many of you already know how to be a pretty good savvy user of internet. Many of you do know that, but still for a layman person like me, what I would always recommend, that if you have a good internet connection in your house, well, good, no big deal. But if you have a limited connection within your house, if you're using a wireless connection, maybe an iPad, or maybe if you're using some laptop with Wi-Fi, prefer to sit close to the router so that you have a good connection. If you use a wired connection, Ethernet connection to your CPU or maybe to your laptop as well, whatever, and then you should not have a problem of range, which is perfectly good. But if you have a limited Mbps connection, maybe with a not with the public IP, sometimes it can happen, sometimes not always, sometimes it can happen that if someone is doing some heavy browsing, like let's say 1080p YouTube browsing, they might take up some significant bandwidth, and in those cases the connection might be a bit what can I say, noisy or disturbing. I might not hear you if you're talking, you might not be hearing me properly, or maybe the video feed that you are looking at, that might become laggy. Things can happen. So in those cases, just try to alert your house people not to do heavy browsing while you are taking classes at the very least. Then again, if you have a, let's say, 30 Mbps plus connection, then you don't have to bother about anything. That's just godlike mode. No, we don't want to have cookies. আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট সেটা হচ্ছে যে try to get good at Google searching. Try to get good at Google searching. I mean, this would actually pay you in the very long run by a huge amount. Google is a tool that can be used in a very productive way if you know how to use it. For example, you see that I was looking for this link, but I forgot this is called administrative zone. But I just added one word just by hunch, because, and then it popped up in the first link. So I'm not bragging about my capabilities. I'm just trying to tell you is that if you know how the Google works by your practice, then you can always get good materials, good resources with least amount of effort. And that can pay you a lot in applicable cases. So build up a habit to look out for solution whenever you do not have any teacher available to you, whenever you do not have your seniors available to you, whenever you need certain thing to be answered, and you have the mood to actually study up certain new stuffs, so that you can actually don't get lost in the internet. I mean, many of the times what happens that is you are about to look out for something productive, and then you just go in here, new tab, and then you see, oh my goodness, there are 2 notifications for me in the message Facebook. So you go in the Facebook, you see 2 notifications, and then you see weird stuff, and then you just get lost in the Facebook, or you got lost in the Instagram and whatnot, and YouTube and whatever. Someone goes to go for Twitch, someone go for the Discord server. Many people have different involvements. My point is, try to learn how to avoid those. Not always, every once in a while, try to alertly learn to unclog your thinking process from the usual. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I hope it does make sense. Does it make sense? Do you get what I'm trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
Good. So it's at 12 now. I'll take a small break, 5 minutes. I'll be right back after 5 minutes. Then I'm gonna start talking about the first chapter. Yeah. So take 5, everyone.